grateful to have been invited to the inaugural E.A.T series event.
I believe so much that nobody is so good in knowledge, but when you have a team of people, you have a lot of experiences and you know that you have built up your knowledge.
I think that there's a lot of untapped potential here in the Nigerian agricultural sector. I believe that a lot more young people are going to have to move into it. I think they're going to need the support of the private and public sector.
Bridging the gap between generations, getting real players in the sector who are doing real work, to have real airtime and real face time.
Half of the time, the solutions that we're proposing, even if they're localized, fail to meet the actual needs of those on the ground.
Ordinary farmers who came by and I gave them seeds and they planted, many of them today in my village are making money. Every season, farmers in my place sell cashews worth 300 million naira. It took one day to plant the tree. The tree stands there for 60, 70 years.
You know, one thing I always say is this, the older generation, they feel that we're not serious. The younger generation think that the older generation they failed us. But I think there's something in between. The answer is not to the end, to two extremes. There's something we can learn from here. So today we're bringing Owuno. I don't want you to be intimidated because your father has a huge history for this country.
All right, first let me also announce that my wife, Owuno's mother, is here. Only 2.5% of Nigeria's land mass is being cultivated. 2.5% of 943,000 hectares of land. 2.5. So we don't have enough gari, enough yam, enough banana, enough orange, enough pineapple, enough, name it, cocoa, cassava. And foreigners who come here ask, what's the matter with you people? I've traveled with an Israeli group before from my village, Tupa, going to Makodi, and they would stop and say, look, stop, what's the problem? One of them got out of the car, took the soil, tasted it, and said, my God, beautiful soil. What's the matter with you people? And then we drove on. So that's it. Where is the problem? You mentioned finance. Extremely difficult to borrow money for agric. But it wasn't so before. Many years ago, the loan for agric was 3%. 3. And then suddenly, we were told to deregulate interest rates. So banks are asking for 40%. Now 25, 30. How can you take a loan at 30% and invest in agriculture? You can't. It's not so elsewhere. Elsewhere, China, 4, 5%, 3%. Western Europe, 2.5%, 3%. India, 6, 7%. So, when you, young people, have ambitions to grow something, you go to the bank, they ask for 24%. They ask for a collateral, which must be a house in Maitama, or VI, or Ikoyi, or Asokoro. Of course, you don't have one. Even if you do and you mortgage it, you will never pay back. So the issue of finance is there, but what did we try to do? 2015, I got to the ministry and I said, we have to change this. We have to change the structure of Bank of Agriculture and make it follow the model of China. In China, the Bank of Agriculture is the largest bank on planet Earth. It has 800 million clients and shareholders. So they lend to each other at 3%. The World Bank has tried to break it up. The Chinese have told them, stay away from us. So we tried to change the Bank of Agric in Nigeria into a bank owned by farmers, especially young people. Farmers will own 40% of the shares of the banks, government 20%, and other private sector big players could own the balance. That way, you were borrowing from your own bank. We have never been able to understand how to manage cattle. You all know the quarrel now between farmers, herdsmen, and so on. We spend $1.5 billion a year importing milk, low quality milk, powdered milk, which we reconstitute with water. Why? Because your 22 million cows roaming around don't drink enough water. They don't have the right kind of grass. And please, grass is not the same as weeds. There is special grass for cattle. It must have at least 15% protein, amino acids, trace elements. Rice is food, but it's a grass. But we eat it because it contains certain things. We don't eat every grain of grass. As long as we continue that way, we lose money, we create poverty here because policies are not properly digested. Cows cannot continue to roam around and give you milk. Every cow needs a minimum of 60 to 80 liters of water per day. 10 kilograms of grass or fodder per day. Sudan exports grass to Saudi Arabia. Grass, they grow bamboo and sheep. Sometimes Saudi Arabia buys from Argentina and Brazil of special grass. Because the Saudis say they want to produce milk. You can't grow grass in Saudi Arabia, it's all desert. They have the largest milk farm in the world, in the developing world. 130,000 cows. They don't go anywhere. They are in air-conditioned tents. Air-conditioned tents. They eat, drink water, and produce milk. Then they export the hides and skins. So the field is so large, I'll let him talk a bit, and then I'll come back to what you can do as young people, and what he has advised that we as a family can do to support youths in agriculture, maybe beginning in Abuja, and then moving out a little bit. But before I forget, just in case I don't remember, when we move on with it, ask me about bananas and cashew nuts. Right? And eucalyptus leaf, and lemongrass, and zobo, hibiscus. 2018, we exported hibiscus to Mexico to the tune of $58 million from this country. We can double it. So, before I finish, you, young people, make no mistakes. There is wealth ahead for you to harvest. It's about structuring it in such a way that you can access it. And then there's West Africa. Today we're the largest producers of rice in Africa. We've taken the leadership from Egypt, but we're still not producing enough. We were spending $5 million a day importing rice, and $4 million a day importing wheat. Why? Why? How can we afford it? Which is why the dollar is now almost 600 naira to one. Naira to $1. Can you afford it? Should you afford it? We managed to reduce rice importation. It wasn't easy. People who didn't like it. Sometimes people ask about policy. Sometimes you do certain things, you make enemies. Deadly enemies. But spoiling business. But you wonder, whom should you satisfy? Your people, your conscience, or the trader? Some foreign person whose interest is, hey, drop the rice, Nigerians will pay. If you look at a country like Israel, small country, about I think 7 or 8 million people now, how does Israel feed itself? Israel even exports fruits and vegetables. It's a desert. How do they do it? Application of science. I see a young man here. It's my in-law. His wife is from my village. He's a farmer, a young Israeli. I'm sure he'll say something to us. But thank you all for coming and for sparing time today. You are going to be the pioneers and the vanguard of this change, because we have no choice, we fathers and grandfathers, but to join hands with you, because the day I go doesn't mean Nigeria will perish. It cannot. It must continue. Through him, through you, it has to go on. But the resources, the wealth of Nigeria is so huge. We have no business with poverty the way we're going now. So I'll let him make a few comments of what he does and his thinking, and then you can ask questions. We'll continue from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so many things to talk about from what he said, but I will start from what Wale mentioned about financing in agriculture. From the bank's perspective, I think that the banks get a little bit of a bad rap. And when we think about the banking industry within Nigeria, it's not very old, right? The modern banking industry. And essentially, the founders of these banks went into banking to make profits, right? So they are primarily, for-profit businesses run by capitalists, right? Not socialists. Do banks have a role in the social development of the countries and where they exist? Absolutely, they do. Because obviously banks are primary sources of finance, but these are still started by people that want to make a profit. Now, if you put yourself in the shoes of any sort of banker or anyone who started a bank, like any other business, you would look for, how do I make the most money, the easiest, right? And I feel that, there was almost a perfect storm of the people who give out the banking licenses are from the government, who are also the ones that control the oil resource, which is also how Nigeria is mostly financed. So when you tie all that in together, it's little wonder that banks were really focused on oil and gas and government transactions for many, many years, right? It was easy, the money came easy, and they did that. Nonetheless, in the same period, I mean, if you speak to any sort of senior banker, they did give out loans to agriculture. And bankers can tell you that some of the worst performing loans they have are agricultural loans. Why? You can pin this down to a myriad of factors. Buffy mentioned the infrastructure gap in agriculture, and the truth is, for agribusiness, you can't really go into it fully without plugging that infrastructure gap to a degree. In many other developed nations, the governments fill these gaps properly, so you're just going in as a business that operates. But here in Nigeria, roads are not good, there's no power, you have to provide your own you have to run your own power generation, essentially. There's a lot of stuff that you sort of have to deal with, right? So that makes it more expensive to do agribusiness. And I think that a lot of people go into agricultural businesses not understanding that these gaps exist and they're going to have to invest in them. So it almost ultimately makes projects more likely to fail, in my own perspective. So from the bank's perspective, that's sort of how I see it. I think that things have changed a little bit with the demand for oil falling, and I think that banks are getting a bit more adventurous also with the change of government policy of government deposits with banks. So banks are, they're trying a little bit more now, so that's sort of my view on banking. With regards to the money in agriculture, there is also a lot of influx of foreign funds into Nigeria today, into Nigerian agriculture and African agriculture as a whole. But I think there's something fundamentally broken with that, because there's a lot of focus around ag tech, right? And we know technology has done incredible things across the world, but as far as the Nigerian agricultural situation goes, or the African agricultural situation, I think that this money forgets that technology is an enabler, right? You need something already on ground operating for that technology to make more efficient and just to make it work better. And there's references of the Facebooks, Airbnbs, and Ubers, but if there were no Toyotas and there were no Kias and there were no Mercedes-Benzes, there would be no Uber. And if there were no real estate construction companies, there would be no Airbnb. And it seems we forget that because the fundamental business of production still has so many challenges, and this technology is not going to make those challenges go away. So I feel like a lot of this money is misdirected, in my view. A lot more of it needs to be poured into the primary production. And on that note, I think that as far as the future of agriculture and financing goes, I believe the solution is a special type of venture capital for African agriculture. Now, typically, what is venture capital? So you have, let's take any modern technology company. Let's take Facebook, for example, right? So when Facebook started off, it showed potential, it showed a lot of promise, right? But essentially, technology works in a way that you have to invest a lot of money up front, probably not going to make profits for a long time, right? So the business is going to be running at a loss, but there's the potential of big profits and scalability at some future date. So essentially, venture capital is people that pour money into this business, right? It's risky, but they pour a lot of money into it upfront in exchange for shares in the hope that one day these businesses are going to be profitable, scale very fast, and they make ridiculous returns on their money. I think that African agriculture is very similar in the structure. You can't work out what an agricultural business in Nigeria is going to be from an office or from a laptop. You have to go out there into the field. There are too many variables that you cannot figure out from the top of it. Supply chains are fragmented, broken. Quality of products, I cannot tell you the number of times that I've bought agricultural inputs with a label that is completely different from the actual composition of what we're buying. Markets are fragmented, there's seasonality, people are good people that know what they're doing are difficult to come by. And all this stuff is stuff that you have to go into the business to figure out. So essentially, I think what happens is that agribusinesses will lose money over a period of time. But with the right sort of leadership and the right passion and dedication, they might figure it out. And if they figure it out, then it becomes a business that can grow very, very quickly. There's more people in the world every day. There's less arable land to farm on. So demand and supply, like it's on the right side of the equation. But hopefully we get the right type of capital we need in agriculture and the industry can grow. Thank you.
People are passing away and they're leaving us with so much information, and they're not tech savvy, so it's not like they're going to post a blog about their life experience. I'm just curious, sir, how can we bridge this gap and get this knowledge and wisdom from the older generations and not lose so much vital information before they pass on? Thank you.
I'll let you take that. Well, that's a very good question. I think in Africa we don't write much. We don't even read much. I don't know if any of you watched the riots in South Africa when the former president was put in prison. It was heavy riots. They looted shops. Many highway streets in South Africa. Looted everything. They even looted coffins, strangely enough. But in one complex, there was a shop nobody entered, a bookshop. Not one looter entered the bookshop. Books, to us in Africa, are of no relevance. We don't read. It's even worse now by the social media. It's so much easier to look at what Facebook said about some musician who fell out with his former wife, married a new one, and so on. Very attractive. So passing information from the older generation to the new is a big problem here. We don't talk. And it's not good because you're going to take over. Whether the old people like it or not, they'll go or you will come. And then you get into the ministry as minister or commissioner. You walk into a fellow called the permanent secretary. He tells you what is going on. You don't know much. He is also the accounting officer in the ministry. He controls the cash, not you. He is the chairman of the tenders board in the ministry, not the minister. Although everybody blames minister. The PAMSEC is the guy, the directors. And they control policy. If you bring a new policy, it will take a while to get them to accept it. A big fight. Although people don't know this, but it's always the minister who failed, the minister this, the press will take the minister so. Now, he said something about government intervening in policy. Sometimes government intervention has worked, with rice, for instance. When I said to the president, I don't see why we should be buying rice, $5 million a day, we can't afford it. Government poured money into rice. The Anchor Borrowers Program of the CBN, make it cheaper for farmers, and farmers are making money from rice. They are. Whether the monies have been well spent or not is another issue. But the same reason that the United States government will say, look, give this to rice farmers or give it to wheat farmers. Governments know that you need to give that support. We need to get governments, states and federal, more pressure to support agriculture. There will be losses. Oh no, we haven't told you, we are among the biggest cashew farmers in the country. I was a minister in 1982. I was 34 years old. Then there was a coup in 1983, and then we were detained. Every minister, governor was locked up. After 8 months, some of us were told you can go home. We found nothing against you. So I got back home, and I had a piece of land. I decided, well, let me plant cashew nuts. Started planting. Every weekend I'll leave my family in Makodi, drive to Kogi State, then drive back with seedlings and plant. We ended up planting some 12 or 13,000 trees, with fire burnt them, and then we replanted and so on. You know what people said to me? The elite, they said, oh, instead of making money as a minister, he was speaking grammar. Is it cashews that will save him now? Mockery. But we grow the cashews. Ordinary farmers who came by and I gave them seeds and they planted, many of them today in my village are making money. Every season, farmers in my place sell cashews worth 300 million naira. It took 1 day to plant the tree. The tree stands there for 60, 70 years. Same as palm trees. So sometimes it's good to try. Not all projects fail. If you raise a plantation and you prevent fires from burning the farm, you'll get somewhere. But like he said, you go into poultry or piggery, or you do tomatoes or vegetables, something can happen and you lose all your money. You can. So we have to communicate more with younger people. I'm doing a small pamphlet called Invent Your Future. And advising young people, if you have a small piece of land in the village, there's no harm in raising a small plantation while you're busy in the city. In 4 years, your palm trees have started fruiting, and they will fruit for 70 years. On condition, of course, that there is no fire. So in the dry season, find time to go home, have the plantation cleared of all weeds and shrubs. You can do the same for oranges, for cocoa, even coffee in the south. The south generally is a good place for coffee, right? You can. Because by the time you are retiring, that plantation becomes a small foundation for support for you to go back. Of course, you may not always be there to look after it. So don't wait. If you have space, plant something. Brothers and cousins may not be the best people to manage it for you, but because they believe you are in the city, you have plenty of money, and if they can harvest and sell, if you come home and complain, your mother will ask you, you're going to kill your brother for money. That kind of story. This is Africa. But again, governments have to come in. They just have to. They do so everywhere. And if they don't, the country faces starvation. Right.
Thank you so much. But just final words to the people. In 1 minute, what is one wisdom you want to leave with the people? We'll start with Owuno, and then we'll end with Chief Audu.
Thanks, Wale. I feel like you're asking me a lot for this final moment. There is potential in agriculture and in agribusiness. We need to eat. Food security is a real thing, and as a country, we need to face that. My parting words would be for everyone to find a way you can support this movement or this conversation. If you are in institutional banking, look at how you can stimulate conversations around providing the right type of finance for African and Nigerian agriculture to grow. If you are in development, look for the people doing real work and try and bring them in while there are strategy sessions and office-based policy writing. Get real people to come and give some advice so whatever we're looking at gets real. If you are a private citizen and you know anyone that is working in agriculture, support them whatever way you can. Micro investments, a bit of advice, connectivity, using your platforms to help them. And if you are in government, we do need government as part of this. So again, open arms, engage a little bit better, and just see how you can help. And for the practitioners out there, don't give up, keep your head up. It's a difficult road we have chosen, and let's fight it through to the end. Hopefully God will give us the strength, and our leaders will help us eventually at some point. But yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
I'll add just a little bit to that. I am no longer active in politics. He runs the farms, and I join hands with him. I'm planting palm trees in Kogi State, next door to my local government in Benue. The piece of land is 500 football fields, 500 hectares. It's very costly clearing. We have a bulldozer, sometimes two. This is the jungle. Not long ago, I saw a python there. You just told the driver, don't kill it. Baboons, whatever. But land clearing is very expensive. Very, very. You have to push down the trees and then plant what you want. Then irrigation, then security and all that. What we're trying to do with some of the governors, and I'm friendly with many of them, is to advise them to help carve out areas in communities where they can give land to young people. Because you need land. 1 hectare each, 2 hectares. Like I said, if you do raise bananas and the correct species, you'll be surprised. 1 hectare of bananas could give you between 18 to 20 million a year, if well managed, if you have the right species. Then, for you young people, let's first apologize to you, an older generation, for the mistakes we've made that have created this crisis in which we are today. We have. You go north and you have somebody who has 30 children and is very proud. Among them, only one has an OND. The rest have never gone to school. Or you have a 5-year-old on the streets with a bowl begging for food and money. There's no way that child will not turn up in future to be a problem. The so-called bandits. If those fellows have any minds, how do you carry a 5-year-old child, march the child into the forest, and stay there demanding ransom until the child dies? Are you a human being? Now, people don't talk about these issues because they are touchy and they are sensitive. But you can't do that. You're not human. So we try to put pressure at different levels on government by very subtle advice. For you, don't give up. The answer is not in migrating to Europe or crossing the desert, arriving in Libya. Not long ago, I saw an auction of Africans. There was a young man, I don't know if he was Nigerian or something, they sold him for $400. That's the price of a cow. A cow was sold. Sometimes we take them away and harvest organs and sell them off and bury the rest. There's no reason for that. for any Nigerian to leave this wonderful place with so much resource and begin to look for survival elsewhere. But something has gone wrong, and we haven't been able to patch it together. Yesterday, a journalist asked me, is there anything to celebrate? Have we achieved anything in 61 years? Yes, we have. We built a brand new city called Abuja. We did. Right? Gowon began the idea after the Civil War. Murtala Mohammed signed the decree. Obasanjo set up a committee. Shagari began the construction of the city in Area 1. I commissioned the first post office in the town. I did, 1982. And then IBB moved the city in 1992. At least that. But that's not enough. We have not grown the economy. And I'll return to the biggest disaster that we faced, SAP. When we started devaluing our currency every week. 1 million naira in 1981 was the equivalent of $1.7 million. Today, a million naira can't buy $2,000. So for young people, we will establish contacts, and I'll come talk with you as frequently as possible. I will do it. Because it's a duty. And we have larger groups which are looking at possibilities. And I will start talking to some of my friends who are governors, local government chairmen. We've got to grow the economy. We have to grow you, otherwise this country will perish. We can't afford it. If there's anarchy, where do I go to with my wife and children and grandchildren, carry a bag, going into exile where? The only free space is the Atlantic Ocean. Niger won't let you come. Can't go to the Cameroon or Republic of Benin. You are stuck. You are too many anyway. 400 million migrants, heading which way? So, we'll be at it together. And I'll talk to some of my other friends and colleagues who may be able to help, even the very wealthy. Talk to them if they're interested in listening, for us to do it. Because finally, the future is yours. There's a lot to make out of that future to stabilize this country. And I'm very proud of you that you're even interested in talking about it. Really proud of you. Like he said, it's not easy. We must find a way of going around it. Thank you, and God bless all of you, and happy anniversary.
Thank you so much, sir. Let's appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. God bless. All right.